Eleanor Hart installed cameras in every room of her mansion to watch the new caregiver, a single dad who seemed far too gentle for what she was paying him. For years, no one had lasted more than a week with her 6-year-old son. Destructive, defiant, impossible. 8 nannies had quit in 3 months. But then Eleanor froze at her laptop screen. Lucas sat quietly beside the man, listening. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. What had this man done to her child? The office on the 42nd floor felt colder than usual. Eleanor Hart sat behind her glass desk, laptop open, watching a man she had hired only 6 hours ago attempt the impossible. The surveillance feed showed her living room in sharp detail. White walls smeared with blue crayon, shattered ceramic from the vase her late husband had bought in Florence. Lucas, standing in the center of it all, fists clenched, face red. She reached for her phone. 3 sentences. That was all it took to end a contract. But her thumb hovered over the screen. Jack Morgan was sitting on the floor, not standing, not towering over Lucas, with folded arms like the others had done. He sat cross-legged on the hardwood, eye level with a 6-year-old who had just screamed himself hoarse. Eleanor leaned closer to the monitor. Jack's voice came through the audio feed, quiet and steady. "What are you angry about?" Lucas kicked a toy truck. It skidded across the floor and hit the baseboard. Jack didn't flinch. "Is it because your mom went to work?" Lucas stopped. His small chest heaved. He stared at the man like he had just spoken a language Lucas thought no one else understood. Eleanor's breath caught. Jack pulled a wet cloth from his pocket. He held it out. "Let me help you clean your hands. Then you can tell me about it." Lucas looked at his palms. Blue crayon streaked across his fingers. He took the cloth, but said nothing. Jack waited. He did not rush. He did not check his watch. He simply sat there while Lucas wiped his hands in silence. Eleanor set her phone down. She had hired Jack Morgan that morning after a recruiter sent his file with a note that said, "Unusual background. Might be worth a shot." The resume listed 3 years as a preschool teacher before a gap, then a string of part-time jobs: grocery stock clerk, night janitor, ride-share driver. The application letter was 1 paragraph. Straightforward. No flattery. He wrote that he had experience with children and needed steady income. Eleanor had almost deleted it. But something about the brevity felt honest. She scheduled an interview. Jack arrived early. He wore a button-down shirt that had been ironed but was slightly too large, like he had lost weight recently. His handshake was firm, but brief. When Eleanor asked why he left teaching, he said his wife had passed away 2 years ago, and he needed flexible hours to care for his daughter. Eleanor asked where his daughter was now. Jack said she lived with his father because he could not afford a place large enough for both of them. His voice did not waver when he said it, but his eyes carried something Eleanor recognized: grief that had settled into the bones. She hired him on the spot, not because she trusted him. She trusted no one anymore, but because desperation had a way of making people reliable. He needed the money. She needed someone who would not quit after 3 days. Still, she installed the cameras, 16 of them, every room except the bathrooms. The security company finished the setup the night before Jack's first day. Eleanor told herself it was standard procedure, reasonable, necessary. 2 years ago, her executive assistant had copied proprietary code and sold it to a competitor. 1 year ago, a nanny she had trusted spent 6 months skimming cash from the household account. Eleanor had built her company by eliminating variables. People were variables. She did not tell Jack about the cameras. Now, watching him sit on her living room floor beside her son, she wondered if he suspected. He had not glanced upward at the corners where the lenses were tucked behind smoke detectors. He moved through the house like someone used to being observed, or someone who had nothing to hide. Eleanor closed the spreadsheet she had been pretending to work on. The quarterly projections could wait. She opened the camera grid. 16 boxes, 16 angles. She clicked on the living room feed and expanded it to full screen. Lucas sat beside Jack now. Not close, but not across the room either. Jack had picked up a book from the shelf, something with a dragon on the cover. He opened it to the first page and started reading aloud. His voice was calm, unremarkable. He did not try to do character voices or make it theatrical. He simply read. Lucas listened. Eleanor stared at the screen. Her son had not sat still for a story in months. The last nanny had tried reading to him, and Lucas threw the book at her face. The one before that gave up after Lucas tore pages out and scattered them across the hallway. But now Lucas sat with his knees pulled to his chest, watching Jack turn the pages. Then something happened that made Eleanor forget to breathe. Lucas leaned sideways, slowly, like he was testing the air between them. His head came to rest against Jack's shoulder. Jack did not stop reading. He did not make a big gesture or pull Lucas closer. He just kept his voice steady and turned the next page. Eleanor's hand went to her mouth. Lucas had not leaned on anyone since his father died. Not her. Not his grandmother. Not the therapist she paid $500 an hour to sit with him twice a week. He built walls around himself and threw things when people got too close. Eleanor had thought it was anger. The therapist called it a regulation issue. But watching her son rest his head on a stranger's shoulder, she realized it might have been something else. Loneliness. Her phone buzzed. A text from her CFO asking about the board meeting tomorrow. She typed a reply without looking at the keyboard. Her eyes stayed on the screen. By the time she looked up again, it was past 7. The camera feed showed Jack cleaning up the living room, while Lucas sat at the kitchen table with a sandwich. Jack had wiped the crayon off the walls. He swept up the broken ceramic. He did not hurry. When he finished, he sat down across from Lucas and ate his own sandwich in silence. They did not talk. But it did not feel uncomfortable. It felt like two people who understood that some days did not need words. Eleanor shut her laptop. She had planned to fire Jack tonight. Now she was going to let him come back tomorrow, just to see, just to watch what happened next. She had been wrong before, about people, about intentions. Her assistant had smiled every morning for 2 years before vanishing with a USB drive full of source code. The nanny had baked cookies and played with Lucas, while transferring money in small increments that took months to notice. Eleanor had learned that trustworthiness was a performance, and performances ended when the audience left. So she would not leave. She would watch, every day, every hour if she had to. The cameras gave her control. She could see what Jack did when he thought no one was looking. She could catch inconsistencies, red flags, whatever he was hiding. Everyone was hiding something. That night, Eleanor sat in her home office with the laptop open. Jack had left at 8 after putting Lucas to bed. The house was quiet now. Too quiet. Eleanor clicked through the camera feeds. Empty kitchen. Dark hallway. Lucas's room, where a nightlight shaped like a rocket glowed near the bed. She clicked on the saved footage from earlier. The moment Lucas leaned against Jack. She played it 3 times. Each time, she searched for something that would explain it. A trick. A manipulation. But all she saw was a tired man reading a book to a lonely child. Eleanor closed the laptop. She should have felt relieved, hopeful even. Instead, she felt something closer to guilt, not for watching, but for needing to. The next morning, Jack arrived at 8. Eleanor had already left for the office. She opened the camera app on her phone during a conference call. Jack was making breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast. Lucas sat at the table, unusually quiet. Jack set the plate in front of him and sat down with his own. They ate without speaking. When Lucas finished, Jack asked if he wanted to go outside. Lucas nodded. Eleanor muted herself on the call and switched to the backyard camera. Jack and Lucas were crouched near the flower bed. Jack was showing Lucas how to pull weeds without damaging the roots. Lucas held a dandelion and watched Jack demonstrate. Then Lucas tried. He yanked too hard and stumbled backward. Jack caught his elbow. Lucas tried again. This time, the weed came out clean. Jack nodded. Good. Just like that. Lucas almost smiled. Eleanor unmuted herself and answered a question about logistics without hearing what had been asked. Her COO repeated it. She gave an answer that must have been acceptable because the meeting moved on. But her eyes stayed on her phone, on the boy crouched in the dirt beside a man she had hired out of desperation. By the end of the week, Eleanor had watched 72 hours of footage. She saw Jack take Lucas to the park. She saw him teach Lucas how to crack eggs without getting shell in the bowl. She saw him sit on the floor and build a tower out of blocks while Lucas knocked it down and rebuilt it 6 times. She saw patience, consistency, no raised voices, no frustration. And she saw Lucas change, slowly. The tantrums decreased. The screaming stopped. He started speaking in full sentences instead of grunts. He laughed more. Slept better. Eleanor should have been grateful. Instead, she increased surveillance. She set alerts for certain keywords, sudden movements, raised voices. She checked the cameras every 2 hours. Sometimes, every 30 minutes. Even at night when she should have been sleeping. She told herself it was caution, due diligence. But late at night, staring at a dark screen showing an empty hallway, she wondered if it was something else. If maybe the cameras were not about watching Jack. Maybe they were about proving she still had control over something. Anything. Because 2 years ago, she had lost control of everything that mattered. And she had spent every day since making sure it would never happen again. The second week started with a disruption Eleanor had not approved. She opened the camera feed Tuesday morning and found Lucas in the backyard at 7:30. Jack knelt beside him near the fence, pointing at something in the soil. Eleanor zoomed in. They were planting seeds, tomatoes maybe, or cucumbers. Lucas held a watering can that was too large for his hands. Water sloshed over the sides. Jack steadied it without taking it away. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Lucas had a schedule. Breakfast at 7, educational videos until 8, then structured play. That was the routine the last 3 therapists had designed. Jack had no right to change it. She pulled up her text chain with him, typed 3 lines about maintaining consistency, then deleted them. Lucas was smiling, actually smiling. Dirt smudged his cheek, and he did not seem to care. He asked Jack a question Eleanor could not hear through the audio feed. Jack answered and handed him another seed. Eleanor set her phone face down on her desk. By Wednesday, she realized Jack was dismantling more than just the morning schedule. The iPad that usually kept Lucas occupied for 4 hours a day now sat untouched on the kitchen counter. Eleanor watched Jack redirect Lucas every time he reached for it, not with a lecture, just a quiet suggestion. "Want to help me make lunch? Want to see if those seeds sprouted yet? Want to build something?" Lucas always said yes. Eleanor told herself it was temporary. Jack was new. Lucas was intrigued. Eventually, the novelty would wear off, and Lucas would go back to demanding screen time the way he had with everyone else. But Thursday came, and Lucas did not ask for the iPad once. Friday, Jack took him to the park. They stayed for 2 hours. Lucas climbed on equipment he usually refused to touch. Other children played nearby. Lucas watched them. Then he walked over and asked if he could join. Eleanor replayed that moment 3 times. Her son, who hit a classmate last month for standing too close, was asking permission to play with strangers. The parent-teacher conference was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Eleanor almost rescheduled. Conferences meant sitting across from someone who would politely explain all the ways Lucas disrupted the classroom, how he shouted during quiet time, how he refused to share, how the other parents were starting to complain. Eleanor had heard it a dozen times. She already knew what they would say. But she went anyway. She arrived 10 minutes early and sat in a chair designed for someone half her height. Lucas's teacher, a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and tired hands, sat across from her. The classroom smelled like crayons and disinfectant. The teacher smiled. "Lucas has made incredible progress this month." Eleanor blinked. "Progress?" The teacher nodded. "He's participating in group activities, sharing supplies. This week he helped another student who was struggling with a puzzle. Yesterday, he was the most engaged child during story time." She leaned forward slightly. "Whatever you're doing at home, it's working." Eleanor's throat went dry. She managed to say something about consistency and structure. The teacher agreed enthusiastically and thanked her for her dedication. Eleanor left the building in a daze. She sat in her car for 5 minutes before starting the engine. A therapist who charged $500 an hour had spent 6 months trying to help Lucas regulate his emotions. 3 educational consultants had designed behavioral plans. 2 child psychologists had recommended medications Eleanor refused to consider. None of them had managed what Jack Morgan accomplished in 2 weeks. She did not know whether to be grateful or terrified. That night, Eleanor stayed late at the office. A product launch was 3 weeks out, and the marketing team kept revising the messaging. She approved the 5th version at 9 and finally closed her laptop. The building was nearly empty. Her heels echoed in the marble lobby. She sat in her car and opened the camera app on her phone. Jack should have left hours ago. His shift ended at 6, but the kitchen camera showed him washing dishes. Lucas was already asleep. Jack dried a plate and set it in the cabinet. Then he pulled out his own phone. Eleanor turned up the volume. A video call connected. A little girl's face filled Jack's screen. She had dark hair pulled into a ponytail and eyes that mirrored her father's. 7 years old, maybe. She smiled when she saw him. "Hi, Dad." Jack's expression softened in a way Eleanor had never seen. "Hey, sweetheart, how was school?" The girl launched into a story about a science project, something about volcanoes and baking soda. Jack listened with full attention, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. Then the girl's voice changed. Quieter. Smaller. "When can I come live with you?" Jack's smile faltered. He glanced away from the camera. "Soon, Lily. I'm working on it." Lily's eyes were bright with tears she was trying not to shed. "You always say soon." Jack's hand tightened around the phone. "I know, I'm sorry. But I promise I'm trying. I'm saving money so we can get a place big enough for both of us. Just a little longer, okay?" Lily nodded, but did not look convinced. "I miss you." Jack's voice cracked. "I miss you too. Every single day." They talked for a few more minutes. Jack told her about a book he was reading with Lucas. Lily told him about a friend at school. When the call ended, Jack set his phone on the counter and stood there. His shoulders sagged. He pressed his palms against the edge of the sink and lowered his head. Eleanor stared at her own phone screen. Jack stayed that way for almost a minute. Then he straightened, dried his hands, and left through the back door. Eleanor sat in her car until the parking garage light switched to night mode. She had thought Jack needed this job because everyone needed money. But watching him talk to his daughter, watching him hold himself together until the call ended, she realized it was more than that. He was not just working. He was fighting to bring his child home, and every day he spent taking care of Lucas was a day he could not spend with his own daughter. She drove home with both hands tight on the wheel. The 3rd week, Eleanor started noticing things she had missed before. Jack stayed late more often, not every night, but 3 or 4 times a week. He cleaned up after dinner, even though his contract only required him to watch Lucas until 6. He cooked meals and left them in the fridge with reheating instructions written on masking tape. He did not log overtime, Eleanor checked the payroll records. He submitted his hours at exactly 40 per week. Nothing more. She pulled up his bank information from the background check. His account balance was never above $800. Rent on his studio apartment was $1,200 a month. The math did not work unless he had another job. Eleanor made a note to ask him. Then she deleted the note. Asking meant admitting she had been watching. Thursday evening, Eleanor left work early. A migraine had started behind her left eye during a conference call and refused to fade. She took the highway instead of side streets and arrived home by 5. Jack's car was still in the driveway. She parked and walked to the front door. Voices came from inside. Not loud, just conversation. Eleanor opened the door as quietly as she could. Lucas was sitting at the kitchen table with colored pencils spread in front of him. Jack stood at the counter slicing an apple. Lucas looked up at the ceiling corner where the camera was mounted behind the smoke detector. "Why do you keep looking up there?" Lucas asked. Jack's hand stilled on the knife. He set it down and turned around. "What do you mean?" Lucas pointed. "You always look at the corner. Is something up there?" Jack leaned against the counter. He looked at the corner, then at Lucas. "There's a camera up there. Your mom has them around the house." Eleanor's breath stopped. She stood frozen in the entryway. Lucas frowned. "Why?" Jack considered the question. "She wants to make sure you're safe." Lucas tilted his head. "She doesn't trust you." Jack was quiet for a moment. "It's not like that. Your mom has to protect what's important to her, and you're the most important thing in the world." Lucas picked up a green pencil and started coloring. "Do the cameras bother you?" Jack shook his head. "No. I understand why they're there." Eleanor backed out of the entryway and closed the door. She stood on her own porch, heart hammering. Jack knew. He had known from the beginning, and he had never said anything. Never asked for them to be removed. Never acted differently because of them. He just accepted it. Accepted being watched. Accepted her distrust, and kept showing up. She got back in her car and drove around the block twice before returning. When she came inside again, she made enough noise that they heard her. Jack greeted her the same way he always did. Polite, professional. He said Lucas had eaten dinner and his homework was finished. Eleanor thanked him. Jack left at 6 like normal. Lucas went upstairs to play. Eleanor sat on the couch and stared at the corner where the camera was hidden. Jack had looked directly at it. He knew exactly where it was. How long had he known? Since the first day? Had he recognized the smoke detectors as too new, too evenly spaced? Or had he simply assumed someone like Eleanor would never hire someone like him without insurance? She opened her laptop and pulled up the footage from the day Jack started. She watched him enter the house for the first time, watched him glance around the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. His eyes lingered on the corners for just a second, not long enough to be obvious, but long enough. He had known from the very beginning. Eleanor closed the laptop and rubbed her temples. The migraine was worse now. She went upstairs and found Lucas building something with blocks. He looked up when she entered. "Mom, can Jack stay for dinner sometimes?" Eleanor sat on the edge of his bed. "Why?" Lucas shrugged. "He's nice, and he's funny." Today he told me a story about when he was a teacher and a kid brought a frog to class. Eleanor had not known Jack was a teacher. She knew it from his resume, but hearing Lucas say it made it real. "Did you like the story?" Lucas nodded. "He said the frog jumped on the principal's desk." Eleanor smiled despite herself. "That does sound funny." Lucas went back to his blocks. Eleanor watched him for a moment. Then she went to her own room and locked the door. She sat on the floor with her back against the bed and opened the camera app on her phone. 16 feeds. 16 angles. She scrolled through them. Living room, kitchen, hallway, Lucas's playroom. She stopped on the study, the room where Lucas did homework. The camera was angled to capture the desk and the bookshelf behind it. Eleanor clicked on the live feed. It was empty. She checked the time. 6:15. Jack was gone. Lucas was upstairs. She was about to close the app when an alert popped up. Motion detected in study. Audio threshold exceeded. Eleanor's heart kicked. She opened the feed. Lucas was in the study, but he was not alone. Jack had come back. Why had he come back? The audio came through in fragments, raised voices, something crashing. Eleanor turned up the volume and leaned closer to the screen. Lucas was not yelling at Jack. He was just yelling, screaming at nothing. A clay model lay shattered on the floor. Jack handed him another one. Lucas threw it against the wall. It exploded into chunks. Jack handed him another. Eleanor's fingers hovered over the call button. Then she saw Jack kneel down. Lucas was breathing hard. His face was red. Jack spoke, and this time Eleanor heard him clearly. "It's okay to be angry. You don't have to hold it in." Lucas picked up another clay shape and threw it. Then another. Jack let him. He did not try to stop him or calm him down. He just stayed there, kneeling on the floor, handing Lucas things to break. After 5 pieces, Lucas stopped. His hands were shaking. Jack asked him something Eleanor could not hear. Lucas shook his head. Jack asked again, "What scares you the most?" Lucas stared at the broken clay scattered across the floor. His voice came out small and unsteady. "I'm scared Mom will disappear like Dad. I'm scared she doesn't need me anymore." Eleanor's vision blurred. She gripped the phone so hard her knuckles went white. Lucas's face crumpled. He stepped forward, and Jack caught him. Lucas buried his face in Jack's shoulder and cried. Not the frustrated tears he shed during tantrums. Real crying, deep and wrenching. Jack held him and did not say anything. He just let Lucas cry. Eleanor sat on her bedroom floor with tears running down her face. She had not known. She had not known her son thought she would leave, had not known he believed she did not need him. He had been carrying that fear for 2 years, and she had been too busy watching him through cameras to see it. She thought of all the nights she worked late, all the times she hired someone else to pick him up from school, all the moments she chose a conference call over sitting beside him at dinner. She had told herself it was necessary, that providing for him meant building the company, securing his future. But Lucas did not care about the future. He cared about whether his mother would be there tomorrow. And he had been too afraid to ask her. Eleanor watched the screen as Jack held her son. Lucas's sobs quieted. Jack said something she could not hear. Lucas nodded against his shoulder. Jack pulled back just enough to look at him. He wiped Lucas's face with his sleeve. Then he picked up one of the broken clay pieces and showed it to Lucas. He said something, and Lucas almost smiled. Eleanor set her phone down. She sat there until her legs went numb. Then she stood up, washed her face, and went downstairs. Jack was leaving through the front door. He saw her and stopped. "I didn't hear you come in," Eleanor said. Her voice sounded strange, too steady. Jack nodded. "I came back to check on something. I'm just leaving now." Eleanor wanted to ask what Lucas had said, wanted to ask how he knew to do that exercise, wanted to ask why he cared so much about a child who was not his. But she did not. She just thanked him and watched him leave. That night, she did not open her laptop. She went upstairs and knocked on Lucas's door. He was already in bed. She sat beside him and asked about his day. He told her about the seeds in the garden, how one was starting to sprout, how Jack said they would have tomatoes by summer. Eleanor listened and did not check her phone once. When Lucas's eyes started to close, she kissed his forehead and turned off the light. In the hallway, she stood outside his door and pressed her hand to the wall. Everything she had built, the company, the reputation, the wealth, none of it mattered as much as the child in that room, and she had almost lost him while trying to protect him. She went to her office and opened the security system. 16 cameras. She hovered over the settings. Then she closed the app without changing anything. Not yet. She was not ready yet. But watching Jack hold her son while he cried, watching a stranger give Lucas what she had failed to give him, that was the moment Eleanor realized she wasn't watching anymore. She was learning. Eleanor canceled her morning meetings, all of them. Her assistant sent 3 texts asking if she was ill. Eleanor did not reply. She sat in her car outside the house at 7:45, watching Jack's sedan pull into the driveway. He was early. He was always early. She waited until he went inside. Then she sat there for another 10 minutes, hands on the wheel, engine off. The garage door was open. She could see Lucas's bike hanging on the wall. A box of old toys her husband had labeled but never thrown away. 2 years of dust on everything. She finally got out of the car and went inside through the front door. Jack was in the kitchen making breakfast. Lucas sat at the table with a workbook open in front of him. He looked up when Eleanor entered. His face registered surprise, then something close to worry. "Mom, are you sick?" Eleanor shook her head. "I'm fine. I just needed to come home for a bit." Jack turned from the stove. He held a spatula. His expression was careful, neutral. "Good morning, Mrs. Hart." She hated that formality, had always hated it. But she had never corrected him because distance felt safer. "Good morning." Lucas went back to his workbook. Jack flipped the eggs. Eleanor stood in her own kitchen like a guest who had arrived too early. She had practiced what she would say during the drive home last night, practiced it again this morning in the shower. But now, standing here with Jack 3 feet away and Lucas coloring a picture of a frog, all of it sounded wrong. Jack plated the eggs and set them in front of Lucas. Then he started washing the pan. Eleanor watched his hands move through the soapy water. Methodical. Efficient. He had worked as a night janitor. She remembered that from the resume. Probably learned to clean quickly during those shifts. "Can I talk to you?" Eleanor's voice came out quieter than she intended. Jack glanced at Lucas, then back at her. "Of course. Lucas, can you eat in the playroom today? I need to talk to your mom." Lucas looked between them. "Am I in trouble?" Jack smiled. "No, you're not in trouble." Lucas picked up his plate and left. Jack dried his hands on a towel and waited. Eleanor realized she had not planned for this part, for standing here with nothing between them but the counter and the truth. "I saw what you did yesterday," she said. Jack's expression did not change. "With the clay models," Eleanor nodded. "I heard what Lucas said." Jack folded the towel and set it beside the sink. He looked at her directly, not challenging, just steady. "I was going to tell you. I thought you should know what he's been carrying." Eleanor's throat tightened. "You've been here 4 weeks. How did you know?" Jack leaned against the counter. "I didn't know. I guessed. Kids who act out like Lucas usually aren't angry. They're scared, or sad, or both. I've seen it before." Eleanor thought about Lily. About Jack's daughter living with her grandfather because Jack could not afford to bring her home. "With your daughter?" Jack's eyes flickered. "Yes. After her mother died, Lily stopped talking for 3 months. Everyone told me to give her time. But time doesn't fix fear. You have to let them say it out loud." Eleanor pressed her palms against the counter. "I didn't know he was scared. I thought he was just difficult." Jack shook his head. "He's not difficult. He's 6 years old and his dad is gone, and his mom works 16 hours a day. He doesn't know how to ask if you're going to leave too. So he breaks things instead." The words landed like a fist to the sternum. Eleanor looked away. Out the window. At the garden where Jack had planted seeds with Lucas. Tiny green shoots were starting to push through the soil. "I didn't know what else to do," her voice cracked. After my husband died, I couldn't just sit here. If I stopped working, I'd have to think about it. About him. About everything we lost. So I didn't stop. Jack did not say anything. He just waited. Eleanor forced herself to look at him. Lucas needed me, and I hired someone else. Every time. I told myself it was for the best, that I was providing for him. But really, I was just running away. Jack's expression softened. You were surviving. That's not the same as running. Eleanor shook her head. I was failing. I'm still failing. Jack straightened. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He set it on the counter between them. I wrote this last night. I was going to give it to you today. Eleanor picked it up. Her hands were shaking. She unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. It was a resignation letter. She looked up. Why? Jack's jaw tightened. Because I'm doing something I shouldn't. Lucas is starting to see me as someone permanent, and I'm not. I'm just the guy his mom hired to watch him while she works. But he's getting attached. And when I leave, when you don't need me anymore, it's going to hurt him. Eleanor stared at the letter. You think you're hurting him? Jack looked down. I think I'm making it harder. He should be close to you, not me. I'm taking up space that's supposed to be yours. Eleanor set the letter on the counter. She smoothed it flat with her palm. He told you he was scared I'd disappear. And you held him. You let him cry. You did what I should have done 2 years ago. Jack met her eyes. You can still do it. It's not too late. Eleanor felt something break open in her chest. I don't know how. Jack was quiet. Then he said, You start by being here, not just physically, actually here. You put your phone away. You sit on the floor with him. You ask him about his day, and you listen to the whole answer. You let him see that you're not going anywhere. Eleanor's vision blurred. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. I've been watching you through cameras for a month, trying to catch you doing something wrong. But all I saw was someone being a better parent than I've been. Jack shook his head. I'm not his parent. You are. I'm just filling in the gaps until you're ready. Eleanor looked at him. Really looked at him, the tired lines around his eyes. The shirt that was too big because he had lost weight. The hands that had held her son while he cried. Jack Morgan was not a threat. He was not a variable to eliminate. He was a man who understood loss and was trying to make sure a 6-year-old boy did not have to feel it alone. Don't quit, Eleanor said. Please. Lucas needs you, and I need you to teach me how to do this. Jack picked up the resignation letter. He tore it in half, then in half again. He dropped the pieces in the trash. Okay, Eleanor exhaled. I'm going to change things. I'm going to work less, be home more. But I need time, and I need help. Jack nodded. I'm not going anywhere. Eleanor thought about Lily, about the video call she had watched through the camera, the little girl asking when she could come home. You need to bring your daughter here. Jack blinked. What? Eleanor straightened. Your contract. I'm changing it. You're full-time now. Same hours, but triple the pay. And I'm covering rent on a 2-bedroom apartment so Lily can live with you. Jack stared at her. Mrs. Hart, I can't. Eleanor held up a hand. Yes, you can. Lucas is getting better because of you. You gave me my son back. Let me do this. Jack's throat worked. He looked away. When he looked back, his eyes were wet. I don't know what to say. Eleanor almost smiled. Say yes. Jack wiped his face with the back of his hand. Yes. Thank you. Eleanor picked up her phone. Then she set it back down. One more thing. The cameras. You knew about them from the beginning. Jack nodded. I assumed. Someone in your position wouldn't hire a stranger without making sure they could see what he was doing. Eleanor felt heat rise in her face. That's accurate. Jack shrugged. I didn't mind. I wasn't hiding anything. Eleanor thought about all the hours she had spent watching him, searching for cracks, waiting for him to reveal himself as another person who would betray her trust. But he never did. He just kept showing up, kept being exactly who he appeared to be. I'm turning them off, Eleanor said. Most of them anyway. I'm keeping the ones outside. But the ones inside, I don't need them anymore. Jack looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or respect. That's a big step, Eleanor nodded. I'm tired of being afraid. Lucas appeared in the doorway. Are you guys done talking? Can Jack come help me with my reading? Eleanor looked at her son. He was holding a book, waiting, not demanding or throwing things, just asking. She wanted to memorize this moment, the way he stood there, the way he trusted that someone would say, yes. Jack looked at Eleanor. She nodded. Go ahead. Jack followed Lucas into the playroom. Eleanor stood alone in the kitchen. She opened the security app on her phone. 16 camera feeds. She clicked into settings and started disabling them one by one. Living room, kitchen, hallway, study, playroom, Lucas's bedroom. She kept only the front door and the driveway. Then she deleted the app. Her phone felt lighter in her hand. 2 months later, Eleanor came home at 4 in the afternoon. She had cut her work hours to 10 a day. Left the office by 3 most days. Her team adjusted. The company did not collapse. The world kept turning. She found Lucas and Lily in the backyard. They were running through the grass, laughing. Jack sat on the porch steps with a spool of strings and 2 kites he had built from scratch. Eleanor sat down beside him. How was your day? Jack asked. Eleanor watched the kids. Productive. Yours? Jack smiled. Lily convinced Lucas that mud is a vegetable. I had to explain why they couldn't serve it at dinner. Eleanor laughed. It felt strange, easy. She could not remember the last time she laughed. Lucas ran over. He was holding something, a piece of paper folded in half. Mom, look what I drew. Eleanor took it. She unfolded it carefully. 4 stick figures holding hands, a house in the background, a sun in the corner. Lucas had labeled each person. Mom, Lucas, Jack, Lily. Who are these people? Eleanor asked, even though she knew. Lucas pointed. That's you, that's me, that's Jack and Lily. It's our family. Eleanor looked at Jack. He was watching Lucas with an expression she could not name. Then he looked at her, and something passed between them. Not romantic, not even friendship exactly. Just understanding. Eleanor pulled Lucas onto her lap. He leaned against her the way he used to before everything fell apart. She wrapped her arms around him and rested her chin on top of his head. It's a beautiful picture, she said. Lucas wiggled free and ran back to Lily. They took the kites from Jack and started trying to get them airborne. Jack stood and walked down to help them. He showed Lucas how to hold the string, showed Lily how to run into the wind. Both kites lifted. The kids shrieked with delight. Eleanor stayed on the porch steps. She watched them run through the grass, watched Jack teach her son something she never would have thought to teach him herself. Watched Lucas smile, actually smile. The cameras were gone. The fear was gone. For the first time in 2 years, Eleanor was not trying to control everything. She was just letting it happen. And it was enough. Jack glanced back at her. She waved. He nodded and turned back to the kids. Eleanor stood and walked down to join them. The grass was soft under her feet. The sun was warm. Lucas ran to her and grabbed her hand. Come on, Mom. You have to try. Eleanor took the kite string. Lucas stood beside her, telling her what to do. She ran. The kite dipped and wobbled. Then it caught the wind and soared.